Every time we lace up our running shoes, we are signing up to do something difficult. Sure, it might have gotten easier over the years, so you might not even think about it that way anymore. But you have to admit that lacing up your running shoes and heading out on a run is a whole lot harder than rewatching The Office for the 15th time or sleeping in the morning. I had an abrupt realization of this last week. I was on a run 3 miles into it, and I realized that my speed and endurance and my overall running performance has dropped dramatically since my half marathon PR in May. Like, it's just exponentially worse. But my determination to go on a run has remained the same. There I was, 3 miles into a seemingly pointless run. No objective, no goal. I'm not training for anything. There's no prize, no audience. No one sees it. Yet running continues to feel like one of the most honest things I do every day. I've talked about this before, but I recently saw it through an entirely different lens, and I wanted to talk about that. I recently read The Plague by Albert Camus, and I highly recommend that book to anyone. And I don't think I'm going to have any spoilers in this video, but I wanted to talk about a small part of that book. And it's going to get a bit abstract, but I hope you'll stick around because I'll bring it back around in the end. As the title implies, the book is about a city that is hit by the plague. And there's a character in the book by the name of Tarrou. Tarrou, in this section of the book, is reflecting back on his life, and he reflects back on his father, who was a lawyer. And he remembers a time when his dad was arguing for the death penalty for a person that he was prosecuting. And it was in that moment that Tarrou had a realization that we are all carriers of a metaphorical plague. The plague became a powerful metaphor for Tarrou, that to live at all is to spread the contagion of suffering and death. Whether that's directly through any suffering or violence that we cause directly, or whether that's indirectly through the suffering and violence that we tolerate. Or if it's just the fact that by simply existing in society, we are causing suffering to other living beings. According to Tarrou, being a carrier of this plague of suffering and death, the metaphorical plague, is literally just human existence. And I think he has a point. I mean, think about it. Think about the clothes that you wear, the food that you eat, the car that you drive, the life that you live. How much suffering do you cause that you don't even have to witness? Where the factories, where these clothes are made, where your phone is made, the impact that your car has on this world, we cause suffering. Sure, the suffering that we cause indirectly might not be extremely violent or obvious, but would you want to work in the conditions where, in the factory where your clothes or your phone is made? That's just something to think about. And for Tarrou, this realization, it became obvious to him that the only honest way to live, understanding that he himself was a carrier of the plague, would be to fight the plague. That meant refusing to justify suffering and death, and refusing to be indifferent to it as well, and then to dedicate his life to fighting this plague in his own way. Not necessarily because he would ever win that fight, but because fighting the plague is the only honest way to live. In summary, Tarrou's realization was that life is unfair, suffering is certain, and there is no ultimate cure for these facts. But we can still choose to decrease suffering by living with courage and compassion, because every effort counts. All right, so taking a step back now, I want to share my thoughts on this section of the plague. To me, as an admirer of Taoism, to me that seemed like Tarrou's Taoist awakening. That it was a realization that he had that he is in the Tao, that he is in the river of life, and no matter what we do, we cannot bend that river. All we can do is steer our boat that is in that river. And the act of steering our boat is a rebellion against the absurdity of it all. Albert Camus also wrote The Myth of Sisyphus, and in that book he talks about Sisyphus's choice to roll the boulder up the mountain. To me, this choice to fight the plague, this choice to steer the boat, this choice to roll the boulder up the mountain, it's all the same, and it's all a rebellion against the absurdity of it all. And in many ways, this was Buddhist too. Tarrou's desire to decrease the amount of suffering in this world is what Buddhism is all about. And yet, we know that the amount of suffering in this world is absolutely astronomical, and the idea that one person could make a difference in that suffering is completely absurd. Yet, that is what Buddhism asks us to do. And in many ways, this was Christian as well, because Christ suffered with humanity. And when Christ did that, he made compassion and solidarity central to the Christian ethic to love your enemies and to carry each other's burdens. We see this in Judaism as well with the story of Job and the entire book of Lamentations. It's essentially the argument that the human condition is something to be wrestled with, this idea that suffering exists and is central to the human condition. The difference between Tarrou's dedication to compassion and solidarity and loving his neighbor was that these wisdom traditions all offer eternal life or nirvana or some sort of cosmic reward. Whereas Tarrou was just doing it because he felt like it was the only honest way to live. This section of the book, with Tarrou explaining his perspective on all of this, has really made me look back and reflect on my life and ask myself why I do what I do. And it's been interesting to do thought experiments with and without an external reward for kindness and compassion and solidarity. Like, does having that external reward make my kindness and my compassion more foolish or more absurd or more genuine? Like, at what point does my why depend on that external reward? And it seems like Camus is posing the question, what if the destination never was the point? What if the act of compassion itself is the reward? Why do we need cosmic guarantees or an eternal reward to act compassionately? Camus once wrote that he wanted to be a saint without God, and this book seems to be an experiment of that in narrative form. It's like it's asking the question, what if Christ never rose from the dead? What if Christ's compassion of suffering with us was the reward in and of itself? All right, so this is where I'm going to bring it back into running. That was a very, very long detour, and it was abstract, but I'm going to bring it back into running now. Every time we lace up our running shoes, we are making Tarrou's choice. We are choosing rebellion over resignation. Most of our runs are anonymous acts witnessed by no one, not changing anything in the grand scheme of things. To the non-runner, running looks absolutely ridiculous. Yet, runners run anyways. And we're running not because we believe it will lead anywhere meaningful. My PR doesn't mean anything to you. We are running because the act of rebellion against entropy, against resignation, has meaning in and of itself. The act of rebellion has meaning in and of itself. And so running is our compassion. Now, I'm not saying running is compassionate. I'm not saying that you should replace all compassion with running. What I'm saying is that running is a rebellion, just as compassion is our rebellion. Every small step on a run, every small act of compassion is a refusal to let entropy win, and a quiet insistence that effort matters even when outcomes don't matter. In a world that feels increasingly beyond our control, running is our rebellion, and compassion can be our rebellion. Not because of a promise of transformation, but because there is dignity in showing up and putting one step in front of the other, one small act of compassion after another, And that's how we carry our small light into the darkness. I hope that was an interesting, thought-provoking video. If it was, I hope you'll stick around, and I'll catch you in the next one. All right, gear for today. As a reminder, I'm not affiliated with anyone. I don't care if you buy any of this, I just share it for fun. Craft trail running hat, Tifosi running sunglasses. This shirt is from Lululemon, Apple Watch Ultra, Solomon running shorts, Stance running socks, On running Cloud Ultras or something like that. I don't know, it's their new trail running shoe. If you have any questions on the gear, let me know.